Square Enix wants to know what Final Fantasy game we want remade after the Final Fantasy VII Remake. During a recent interview, the director of Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, talked about Square Enix being interested in what games fans wanted remade. Well, let's go ahead and let Square know. And in this video, I'm going to be covering the Final Fantasy games that I want to see a remake of. Starting off this list is Final Fantasy VI. Out of all of the Final Fantasy games ever created, I feel like Final Fantasy VI could benefit the most from a remake made from the ground up. This game calls out to have improved visuals, and out of many of the Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy VI's story still holds up the best. That steampunk setting, mixed with the medieval setting, the villains, the world that was created, the characters were all amazing. There is so much emotion packed into this game. And I feel like just putting that HD graphics of today's standards on Final Fantasy VI and retelling some of these scenes would make the game even more memorable than what it was. It would give players a chance who never have picked up Final Fantasy VI, who take a look at Final Fantasy VI and complain that its visuals are outdated, a chance to replay this masterpiece, because its story is amazing. And it focuses so heavy on so many dark themes, such as suicide. Let's talk about the opera scene, actually. The opera scene, to me, would be a prime candidate as to why this game needs to be remade. Back on the hardware that the Final Fantasy VI ran on, they didn't have the ability to be able to create voices for the characters. And Final Fantasy VI's opera scene is one of the most memorable in the series for many, many people. And I feel like that scene could just add so much more depth if they actually got someone who was able to sing opera, applied the lyrics to it, remade the song to fit around the visuals of the actual opera that was being sang. I feel like that whole scene could just be so memorable. And there are so many other scenes that I think would be fun as hell. The scene with Cyan, man, I feel like that alone with voice acting could just be brought alive so well. And there's so many other character arcs and character elements in here that just could benefit from added emotion that this game could add. If Square Enix is going to remake any Final Fantasy, though, I think it needs to be 6 next. After Final Fantasy VII, it needs to be Final Fantasy VI. The other one I would like to see a remake of would be Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX was my very first Final Fantasy. It was the Final Fantasy that got me into Final Fantasy, so naturally I would pick to have an HD remake of it. I also think Final Fantasy IX has a really great story. Despite a couple of characters in the game, namely Amarant and Quina, feeling out of place and just kind of feeling like they were added in there to give more party members, I still think that this game could potentially be remade and be something special. It would be a difficult game to remake, though, because not only are you exploring different continents, not only do you have a desert-based continent, a snow-based continent, and a very rocky continent, along with the grassy plains that you start out on continent, you actually go through to visit an entirely new world. I think that, they could do this game justice by doing a remake as well. I think that there are some scenes in there that could play out very well voice acted. I would potentially love to see Square Enix tackle a Final Fantasy IX remake. And while we're talking about Final Fantasy IX, let's just get the other one out of the way that's on the PlayStation. Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII, to me, would be another game that could benefit very well from a remake. Now, to get this game with today's standards of graphics would add a lot more depth to the scenes. I feel like that there were some scenes that were that could use that fresh coat of paint, use that on there to bring them through so much more. I mean, like, the thing is with Final Fantasy VIII, though, I mean, they already tried to transition the FMVs into the the gameplay as it was, and we're taking the landing, and when that ship comes in to doll it and it lands on the shore, it looks like the characters then just get out, and then they're able to walk through as if like the scene had just barely ended. So to have that kind of come back in a way and have this game just look so much more graphically appealing. Then of course there's the whole scenes with Renoa and Squall. I think that they could make the enhanced visuals, things like that. I think they could do so much more with it. There's a lot that they could do with Final Fantasy VIII. If they improved the graphics and added voice acting, I think there could be a lot more depth to the characters. Just because Final Fantasy VIII is also one of those titles in the Final Fantasy franchise that I feel like is really the only one where none of the characters felt forced into the plot. They all had a reason that they were there. And even the connection that they had with each other, how they all knew each other when they were kids, I thought was pretty cool. Some people kind of complained about the whole amnesia thing, being a third time in a row. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really great plot concept, and I really did feel that all the characters had a reason to be in this game. And the last one I want to talk about today is Final Fantasy IV. Now this one is on the bottom of my list because Final Fantasy IV is not my favorite Final Fantasy. It's not horrible, it's not epic, but it is still a great game. And I would buy the shit out of this even if they did remake it, because I still love the game. And I still think it could benefit from a full-on HD up remake. It's just when it comes to Final Fantasy, I feel like there's other Final Fantasy games that have a better story that could use the improved visuals, the voice acting to tell its emotionally impacting story. And while I think Final Fantasy IV has an emotional impacting story, I think there's other games that would have more of an impact and would benefit from being remade, but this still would. There are scenes from Final Fantasy IV, such as the attack on Mysidia, the attack on Rydia's village is one, being another. There's that constant struggle between Kain and himself as he goes from shifting from good guy to bad guy constantly, that I feel like it could benefit from as well. And Medio, the spell Medio, man, we're talking remake. That shit needs to be legit. Like, that needs to be a full-on crucial moment inside of the game where it just looks badass as shit as Tella's dying. I feel like Tella was just kind of the one character in Final Fantasy IV I didn't care about. Here this character's dying before me because he sacrificed to save everybody. And I'm just like, I ain't gonna miss you. I think to imply a scene with people crying, though, build that up, they could do a perfect job at telling that. And there are so many other sacrifices in this game too that we could benefit from it as well. But Final Fantasy IV definitely deserves a remake as well. And though it's not so much a remake as it would be a remastering, I'm going to throw in a remaster in there anyways. For those of you who do not know, a remake is a game that is built from the ground up with a completely new engine, completely new graphics. They're not porting it over or updating the visuals in any way. A remastering is where they are taking a game that was on a previous system and updating the visuals, much like they did with Final Fantasy X and the upcoming Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age. But another game that needs a remastering is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Why haven't we got a HD remastering of Crisis Core? This game is flat out epic. I love the hell out of this game. We want to talk about an emotionally impactful Final Fantasy. Crisis Core has got to be on that list. This game, from the relationship between Zack and Aerith, straight down to the friendship bond between Zack and Cisne, and the relationship that's constructed with Cloud and Sephiroth. I think this game needs to be brought to a wider audience. This game was a hidden gem on the PSP, and it deserves to get a chance to be experienced by a wider audience. So I think this game does warrant a full-on HD remake on the PlayStation 4 with improved visuals and overall trophy support. I would platinum the hell out of this game if they actually release this on the PlayStation 4. The last one I want to talk about is Final Fantasy Tactics. Now, I just sat down and finished Final Fantasy Tactics a couple of months ago as my goal this year to try and beat all of the Final Fantasy games that I haven't played. The remaining 3 that I have are Final Fantasy, which I still need to just beat the final boss on, Final Fantasy II, and Final Fantasy V. The latter 2 being a grind fest to actually do so, but I'm ready for the challenge and I'm going to do it. But before that, I decided to pick up Final Fantasy Tactics and play through this. Final Fantasy Tactics, to me, could use an HD remastering. I feel like this game in itself could use so much built from the ground up. It could benefit a lot. There are so many emotional scenes, so many impactful moments put into the War of the Lions. I feel like, in a lot of ways, to take the translation from the War of the Lions and apply this to a full-on, built up from the ground up remake could bring this world to life. Now, I haven't played the other Tactics games, but I have played Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings. And both of those games have really incredible stories as well. I like the lore of Evilise. But War of the Lions was just so war-driven. There's so much going on. There's so much impactful moments as you hear the story unravel between Delita and Ramza. And I kind of want them to do away with the permadeath if they were to do an HD remake or a complete remake of this game. Get rid of the permadeath feature and make some of those characters that join your party, such as Agreus, Orlando, Mistadio. What was her name? I can't think of the name, but it was one of the main villains towards the end. It was his daughter. These characters need to have a more developed backstory. Well, let me rephrase that. They need to have their backstory come out more. They need to have their backstory be prevalent in the game and not so much feel like you're relying on just your units you've been accumulating through this whole game. I feel like they should play a crucial part in some of these battle scenes. You know, that's just kind of it. Once they joined your party, they never really said much, and that really bugged me. I felt like that was lost potential because I found myself wanting to know more about these characters. They were so driven motively, and when they joined your party, they had their reasons they were joining, but then that was all you heard from them. No more was there. And that has to be my biggest complaint about Final Fantasy Tactics right there. So if they are going to make that up, you know, take that into consideration. Keep the battle system the way that it is, and then make the graphics look beautiful. I feel like there's so many cities that they could bring to life, the hustle and bustle, you know, change it into more of an explorative kind of RPG, just in general, rather than having you go around on the map and just click things. You know, Final Fantasy Tactics is another one of those Final Fantasy games that deserve a bigger audience. These are the games that I want to see have a full-fledged remake. These are the games that I think Square Enix should really take a look into, invest time into creating, and ultimately giving us remakes. Now, before I close out this video, there is one last thing I want to say. I am okay with Final Fantasy getting remakes from Square Enix. I think it's great that Square Enix wants to pay homage to a lot of their older classics, listen to fans who want updated visuals of this, and rightly so. There are some epic story moments in Final Fantasy that just warrant voice acting, better graphics to bring out those emotional scenes. But Square Enix needs to have teams that are working on new Final Fantasies. Just because we have the Final Fantasy VII remake coming out, just because Square Enix may go remake Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy VIII next, doesn't mean I want to see Final Fantasy XVI put on hold while they do this. I feel like they need to distribute out their team members to work on these games, work a little bit better on their time management, and still pump out new Final Fantasy titles while re-exploring the old ones and bringing remakes that fans want to see. I think there is a great medium for both. Square Enix has been on track with a lot of their RPGs lately. You know, they've recently just brought out the new Star Ocean game, the Dragon Quest Builders, Dragon Quest Heroes, you know, Dragon Quest 11 on the way, you know, brand new IP that came out, I Am Setsuna. Pick that shit up if you have not done so yet. That was a very underrated gem from last year. And overall, I'm okay with it as long as they continue on working on new titles in their franchises or coming up with new IPs. That's just crucial for a gaming company. I don't think it's healthy for a company to completely live in the past to the point where they're just pumping out remake after remake after remake of all these great games and not bringing out new titles in the series or new IPs. That being said, this has been my thoughts, my opinions on what Final Fantasy games I want to see remade. Leave your comments down below. Let me know below in the video comment section what Final Fantasy games you want to see remade. And let me know just more of a reason as, oh, I just want Final Fantasy VI. Why do you want Final Fantasy VI? Why would Final Fantasy VI be a prime candidate to be remade? What's so special about Final Fantasy VI that you want to see it get a brand new, fresh coat of paint? Let me know down below. Be sure to hit subscribe there for me. New content will come your way. You guys are watching the Spoony Bard, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. The Spoony Bard is checking out.